You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Life is not easy. It never was, and it never will be. A good life takes grit. Prioritize who you are and who you want to be, because life isn't fair, and a little grit can make all the difference.
Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. Brian is out on a hunt today, hunting some turkeys down in Texas. He'll be back in a couple of days. So for now, you're just going to be hearing from me. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about this show. This is about hunting mountain lions. It's about houndsmen. You're going to hear from Randy Pixler from Black Timber Outfitters. He's been a houndsman professionally for over 12 years. He's got a lot of knowledge and insights that he shares with Brian. Brian talks about a lot of new things that he learned this last week. It's a really cool podcast. If you've ever thought about hunting mountain lions or about owning hounds, Randy's got some tips and advice. We're going to be real quick, and we're going to get to the podcast. If you haven't already, go to briancall.com and sign up for our newsletter. We're going to be doing lots of giveaways that you can only get if you're signed up for the newsletter. We also have lots of deals and discounts. If you're on YouTube, scroll down and look in the description. If you're just listening to this podcast, go to the description, go to your details, and you should be able to see some of the discounts and deals that are there for you. And that's it for today. Enjoy the show.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am in beautiful, sunny Cortez, Colorado. Right? We're in Cortez, right?
We're in Cortez, and it is sunny today.
And the voice of my guest is none other than the illustrious Randy Pixler. Black Timber Outfitters.
Yep.
So, folks, I'm here with a lion hunter, a houndsman, and you've been hunting lions for how long?
Probably, I think 15 years, 14 or 15 years.
Okay. And how old are you, man? You have a baby face.
Yeah,
like you got the Justin Bieber kind of.
It's getting gray, though. It's getting gray. 36.
Okay.
36, so.
Okay, 36 years old. And we've been mountain lion hunting for 3 days. Mm-hmm. It's dry ground. There's really no snow. Different kind of conditions than the typical lion hunting that would happen.
Especially in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And there's a lot of misconceptions around lion hunting. There's a lot of things that people, in their mind, they hear houndsmen, they hear hunting with dogs, and they even have a knee-jerk reaction to just the fact that you're hunting mountain lions in general. Like mm-hmm. such a majestic animal. I don't know if I could actually shoot one. You hear that kind of being said from guys who are, dyed in blue hunters, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I kind of wanted to get into that in today's podcast with you. And, but before we do that, I want to learn a little more about you so people have some context. How long have you been guiding in general?
So I actually got a really late start into hunting. We grew up, financially not very well off. And so when my dad hunted, it was because we needed the meat and we needed to eat. So it was no time to really be taking a kid hunting. I mean, he had to go hunt and produce. And, so I was probably 17 or 18 before I was able to start hunting for myself and obviously instantly loved it. Become probably addicted to it. I started guiding. I live here in Colorado, but we live right on the border of Utah. And so a friend of mine, him and his brothers had an outfit in Utah just across the border in a phenomenal unit called the San Juan unit. It's world renowned for elk, mule deer, bear, everything. It's the best of everything, honestly. And so in 2004, I started, guiding for them over there. And I basically had done that for 10 or 11 years. And then they were getting kids that were hunting age and growing up and they wanted to spend more time. And I just saw it slowly getting to a point that more than likely they were probably just going to end up dissolving it. And so I had just talked with them about, buying them out and continuing doing it. And the reason we do it, I have a full-time job. I work, I'm a mechanic, but we all love to be in the woods. I mean, I would be in the woods 12 months out of the year if I could, but that's not financially feasible. So the only way that I can afford to be in the woods 3 or 4 months out of the year is to take people and charge them some money. And so that's what we do. So
I think it's a special kind of enjoyment that comes from helping other people also, do something they've never done before. Taking a guy that has never been out west who draws a phenomenal elk tag and taking him out to kill his first bull and seeing those bulls scream, and it's got to feel pretty cool.
Absolutely. And kids, we were talking about turkey hunting and how, like, to people who hunt these great, big, exciting Western big game stuff, lion, sheep, goat, elk, turkey hunting might not seem that exciting.
We talked about that.
Some of my most memorable hunts are taking a 10, 11-year-old kid turkey hunting and watching him just become overwhelmed with excitement and just come undone at a 18-pound gobbler coming in, you know, so, and it's the same for adults. I love watching grown men just fall apart. I enjoy that more than probably hunting myself.
Well, how many cougar kills have you been on?
Some guys keep track of it and I never have. I would say for the last 10 years, let's say kills, I would say I probably average being on or a part of between 10 and 15. So 100 to 150 in the last 10 years.
Yeah. And it's been interesting to watch you work with the hounds and work with your dogs and see how they work. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around hunting with dogs, especially for cats. And I can hear the dogs now.
I can hear my dogs. There must be a barn cat.
So from my perspective on the outside looking in years ago, I've been more educated now than I was back in the day. But it used to be like, hey man, it's cheating. You got a dog. It's not fair. You get like 10 dogs and you go just run down a cat and put it in a tree and then you shoot it. And it's not very sportsmanlike and so on. But then there's been recent episodes like on Meat Eater over the last number of years. Donnie Vincent went out and he hunted cougar and you go out and you actually experience it and you realize there's a lot more to it than that it's a lot harder than people think. There's nothing cheating about it, really. It's one of the only ways it can be done.
It's probably the only way that it can successfully be done. I mean, there's anomalies. People call a lion in once in a while, or you see one while you're out hunting, but the odds of that are astronomical. So, yeah, that's probably the biggest misconception is it's cheating and it's easy. And part of that is, I think, even in these videos, I'm sure, the cameraman could attest to, it's very hard to capture the hunt. I mean, how many lion videos have you seen where, we got a lion track here, we're going to set the dogs loose, and then the next clip is walking up to a lion tree. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the conception by most people. That's what you do. You just turn them loose, in the snow, you drive around, you walk 100 yards to the tree and you shoot it and you're done. And it never happens that way. and when it does, I feel cheated personally.
Yeah.
And I've said that multiple times to you. 2 days ago, we just grinded a tom track out for hours and hours over the, several miles and it didn't work out. But I said to you, I would rather do this and not see a lion than turn out and 400 yards and 15 minutes later have a lion treed and shoot it. Like that's, you just feel like you were robbed of the experience because that's what we love about dirt hunting. And in Colorado, we don't get to do a lot of that. I love April and November when you can hunt in the dirt and not in the snow.
How many guides and houndsmen hunt when there's no snow?
Well, it depends on the area. I mean, if you get into Arizona, if you're going to be an outfitter for lion, you're going to have to do it in the dirt. New Mexico, some of the southern New Mexico stuff, that's the case. In Colorado, honestly, I would say probably for sure less than 10%. Do it in the dirt, without snow. And Utah's probably very similar. So,
well, in the last 3 days, I would say hiking wise, I've probably hiked far more doing this hunt than I would a backpacking deer or elk hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And by far, like, it's from morning till we're done. Mm-hmm. It's a grind. We're hiking. And the thing is if the dogs get on a track, the cougar goes where it goes. And that means when you're following those dogs, you go where they go. And that means you're going off of cliff ledges and rocks, and you're going through brush and oak brush, and it's not like it's a trail either. Like, if I'm deer or elk hunting in general, I'm going to take a certain pace, hike into an area, glass it. No, this is just up, down, all around, up one canyon, down the next canyon. Nope, we're going back to the beginning, back down that canyon, up the other side, crossing rivers. It's intense.
Yeah, through cactus, just turning your arms to hamburger and brush. Honestly, that's probably one of my appeals is, as a hunter, like, when you go elk hunting, you're in control of the situation. Where you go, what you do. My wife, she used to ask me, she doesn't anymore. She'd say, well, what time do you think you're going to be back? And I'd just laugh. Like, the second you open that tailgate and let the dogs out of the truck, out of your hands. You have no control of where you go, how far, when you're done. You're at the mercy of the lion and the hounds.
So that's another thing. So it's physically demanding. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is how much goes into the dog-human relationship. And getting a dog, I mean, it's not like you just go buy a hound and then you're just able to do this.
Oh, no. And I actually know a lot of people that have bought really good hounds, and within 6 months, it's not a really good hound anymore. I mean, you've probably seen it in the dog experiences and training that you've done. We can screw a hound up really quickly, or a dog. And some dogs, I have some dogs that they just flat won't go with someone else. They won't hunt for someone else. They're loyal to me. The amount of work that goes in, behind the hunt, and that's something that a hunter doesn't really get to experience, which is too bad. But there's just so much work. I told you earlier, it's a lifestyle. And I have people all the time, guys who guide for me, friends, they go, they do it, and they start talking this stupid talk, like saying, man, I think I really want to get a hound.
I know.
And I'm just like, don't. Just stop. Think about this. I have hounds. Go with me every time. You're a fool if you get a hound.
Right.
Don't do it.
So, each morning we're rolling up as the sun's coming up, and, describe to me your process for hunting on bare ground. Because normally if there was snow, I imagine what you would do from, I watch YouTube. You drive around, look for fresh tracks crossing a road. Yep, that's a tom. Get the dogs out, especially if it's a fresh snow. The snow came down within the last 8 hours or whatever. And then you find your track and you get the dogs out and you go after the tom. Yep,
it's really, lion hunting is just a numbers game. Whether it's on snow or bare ground. With snow, it's country you cover. You just cover as much country as you can. That's why you usually run a higher success rate on snow, because you can cover 20 times as much country.
And just look for one that's crossing a road.
Yep. Bare ground, you really just have to rely on past experience. And I still have a ton to learn. The guys that I've learned from and I idolize, it just blows me away that they can pull up basically into a canyon or a mountain range and go, that's where a tom's going to cross. And it usually happens. And that's just years and years and years of experience, and I'm learning it. I mean, I've said how many times, like, this is what they do, this is where they go, and then sure enough, we go through there, and there they are. That they all travel typically the same and act the same, and that's experience, and that's So when I get up, I go, same thing. It's a numbers game. A Tom is going to come through this area. You know, he has a home range. He's constantly traveling looking for food or ladies. And he hasn't been here in several days. He's due to come through. I saw where he was making scratches, you know, a few weeks ago, but I haven't seen him since. He's going to come through here. And they usually do. I mean, it might not be the day you want, but usually within a day or two, you have a pretty good idea of when they're coming through. And all of that considered, the stars still have to line up. They have to go left instead of right. There's just so many variables, but that's what I love.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday was, I think, the funnest day so far. The first day, you know, we got into some stuff that looks like it's Arizona, just rocks and junipers and just gnarly and just beautiful country. But right off the bat, we got on fresh bear.
Yep.
And the dogs are just, you know, you're trying to call them off because we're not trying to kill a bear, but you know, you're getting after the dogs, but you could see the dogs get excited. Right. And so I'm like, okay, that's cool. But I didn't get to see them work a track because you just pulled them off it.
Yep.
So yesterday we go in and you're like, okay, this little saddle is a travel corridor for these big cats, these big toms. They come through here and there's a set of rock ledges where they lay up and you see them there often. And it's not far from a couple of kills that we saw that are old, month or so, but nonetheless, they're there. We hike it down in there and the dogs are just kind of like ho-humming along. They're fine, whatever, you know, but then they actually hit tracks, fresh, that they can smell. And to hear them just like light up and go nuts and the tails just start, and watching the excitement on the dogs makes it really exciting. It's fun. It's fun to watch that. And then to see him like pick around, you know, and try to figure out where that cat went, where it came from. And you can see how it's really easy for them to go backwards on the trail the cat came in on instead of the trail that the cat came out on, which has happened a few times now where we've kind of gone down the trail backward. The dogs kind of figure out, oh, that's the wrong way. And then they come back.
Yeah, and they do usually figure it out. Sometimes, especially on a fresher track, it takes them a long time to figure that out. As a rule of thumb, if you probably remember, almost every time they've been backwards, it's because that's the direction we came into the track. And so they hit the track and they just start going. And sometimes they figure it out and sometimes you have to point it out to them. They usually will always figure it out, but sometimes you're just saving yourself an hour of them going backwards.
Well, and then we were able to find some softer soil where they leave a mark and then you're showing me fresh scrapes where they mark their territory. And it's very easy when you point it out. Oh yeah, there it is, Big Tom. I look at the ground, I can't see. They all look the same. I can't tell a dog track from a cat track half the time. And you've described them to me, but how long did it take for you to like be able to look at the ground and tell a track from a track?
Probably a couple of years. I mean, before you can do it at a high rate of speed when you're cutting for tracks. I know guys that can be driving 40 miles an hour and go, whoop, that's a lion. And it's funny when we're cutting in the snow, you want to turn everything into a lion track. And so it's like, you know, elk, oh, is that? And you back up, and deer, oh, is it? And you back up, and coyotes, and you every time you do it. And then when you see a lion track, it doesn't matter at what speed, you know instantly it's a lion track. And so a couple of things that, you know, I told you is, number one, the biggest thing is when you're looking for tracks, really just, even in house cats, like they walk with a purpose. They don't waste energy. They don't waste, you know, a precious resource. Everything they do is with a purpose. And so they're an apex predator. They don't burn energy. They're stalking. They lift their feet. They set them. They lift their feet. They set them. They don't wander. They don't dart. A cat track will always be super clean. It won't have a bunch of dirt in it where it's flipping and dirt's falling back in. And you see the dogs, they're kind of just everywhere and inefficient and messy and just like a domestic dog is. So those are probably the biggest things that you see and how you recognize. You know, everybody says claws. Well, once in a while a cat will leave claws, especially in deep snow or mud or that kind of stuff. I don't even have to see a pad to generally know if it's a cat or not, just by the pattern that it's walking in,
right.
You know, from structure to structure. They don't walk out in the open. They go from tree to tree, underbrush. Dogs don't do that. So
yeah, that's true. Especially when you get on a rocky ledge and where they like to walk right up against the rock. That's so you can just picture a house cat doing the same thing.
Yep.
You know, really different.
Yeah.
So when we got on that track yesterday and the dogs come out, I wasn't sure if they could pick it up because it looked like maybe it'd been a while, and took some time. And what we're struggling with is how scent behaves, and that's something that it's cool to watch, because when it's wet and there's not a lot of wind, you know, wet-ish, damp, it seems like all the scent kind of holds and stays there. And then when you move out in the dry areas and these ridge tops where they walk, the dogs kind of hit a wall, especially if it's super windy.
Yep.
And so, you know, what's the deal with wind?
It blows the scent away. I mean, people think of the scent being what the footprint left in the dirt, and it's really not. It's the molecules, the bacteria that's falling off of the animal as it's walking. And so as that's falling and hitting the ground, that's really what they're smelling, not just where this tiny little pad touched the ground. And so when there's a ton of wind, it just blows it away. Scent it's an enigma. I try to pretend like I understand it. I have no clue. I would imagine if you've ever talked to like the guys who train police dogs, they write books, and I mean, it is fascinating scent and scent conditions. And I don't think any of us will truly understand it.
I think if you don't have, we just can't smell like at a level to truly understand it. You know?
Yeah.
I was telling you about having whitetail be on the ground. My scent blows to them from a tree at 40 or 50 yards away, and they look straight into the tree at where you're at. It's like they were able to pinpoint the direction of that scent and then locate the source of it.
Yep.
And for that to be so innate in your of an ability is just beyond us.
And to take that one step further, I've had a couple of really good, when you're hunting bear, you put them on the top of the truck and you drive around and you call it rigging. And when they smell, they don't have to smell a bear. They'll smell where a bear walked 6 hours ago, 7 hours ago, you know, as long as the wind is bringing that track their direction. I've had some really good strike dogs. I know rig dogs. I know some other guys who've had better rig dogs than me, but a couple I can think of.
And that's dogs that can smell from the truck when you're driving around.
Yes. I've had a couple, one in particular I can think of, and I've seen a couple that they will literally bark, okay, and you go, okay, we got scent, and stop, and you look out there and they know the direction it came from. And I can think of twice I've had this dog, no other dog barked, and they'll bark at the scent in the air, but the second they hit the ground, they don't bark until they're on the track. And twice I can remember of hundreds of times, I've cut this dog loose and he absolutely left the country. And the one time, the first time I heard him bark, and we're talking up a steep, nasty hill, he was 800 yards away. I mean, and he knew. It's not like he wandered up there.
Right.
He came off the truck and he knew where that scent came from, and he went straight to it.
It's
800
unreal.
yards away. Insane.
Well, it's neat to see you have certain dogs that have what you called a cold nose. And so describe what a cold nose is.
So a cold nose is just a dog that smells way older tracks than we call them hot nosed dogs, warm nosed dogs, medium nose. It's kind of just how you judge what a dog can smell. And some of that is actual ability, and a lot of that is heart and drive, actually. I mean, determination. An old dog can do so much more with so much less just because they learn and they know. You've seen it. The old dogs, when we're dirt hunting, they don't almost, when it's a tough track, they almost don't even smell the ground. Like, they understand that the brush holds the scent so much better than the dirt. So you watch them, right? They're going from brush to brush to brush. They know. Right. And some of that is ability and nose, but some of that is just smarts and determination and heart.
Yeah.
And so one thing I was going to talk to you about, like, everybody gets, falls in love with this cold-nosed dog, but every dog has a place. And if you just have a pack of cold-nosed dogs that straddle a track and boo-hoo down it until they jump the animal, you don't have enough. I mean, you need dogs that can rig. You need dogs that can drift a track, which usually they're warmer nosed dogs. They don't go track to track. They're actually running the scent out of the air, and they're shortcutting and they're cheating, and they're the ones that drive a track. When you get into scenarios like we had today where we had a tom and a female and they're just all over in an area back and forth, and especially if they've been there for a day or two, sometimes a cold, super cold-nosed dog is the worst thing in the world. They just won't ever leave. They'll just keep boo-hooing around
the whole
and
thing.
track to track and then backwards and forwards and never get out of there. And you need that dog that's going to find the freshest track or can't even smell the old tracks, that can hit it and burn it out of there. I mean, they're literally like a football team. If you had a whole team full of quarterbacks, as cool as that sounds, you got nothing.
Right.
You have to have the grinders and the fast ones, and they're a football team. So it is so cool to watch.
It's cool because you have a couple of dogs that are cold-nosed dogs, and where we're coming on tracks, you're, like we said earlier, you're like, okay, cats seem to come to this spot every now and then, for a few days in a 14-day window or something. So it's like, okay, let's get over there and see if cat's been there. And then we get there, and sure enough, there's some tracks. But you take your cold-nosed dog, and it sniffs the exact footprint where the cat was, because we can see the track, and the head pops up. It's like, arr! And then he hits the next one, arr! And they get so excited. The other dogs come along, and they're like, it's like, yeah, I don't smell this, but I like what you're doing,
Yeah.
And then he kind of, follows it out, and then they kind of follow along. And it's interesting how I was noticing there's a few dogs that just get excited and just run ahead. Mm-hmm. They also bark a whole bunch. Like, I found it. It's over here. And none of the other dogs believe them at all. Like, they're like, yeah, we know you. You say a lot of false alarms. But then they hear a certain dog that they trust. And they're like, oh, if he barked, then he's on it.
Yeah, it's just like me. I have certain dogs that I basically call a check dog. I mean, when Toad barks, mm-hmm. You can go right to where he barked and look down, and the track is between his two front feet because he had his nose in the track. And if you get a pack of wild maniacs and they take off running and barking and Toad doesn't go, it's probably not good. I mean, it could be deer, skunk, elk. There are check dogs.
Right.
And that comes with age usually. Some naturally just don't chase other game. Mm-hmm. But quite honestly, I don't even really care much for that kind of dog. Like, you want a driven dog, a gamey dog, mm-hmm. and it's your job to just teach them not to chase the other stuff. But yes, they learn to trust each other. And a couple of days we had Mason hunting with us, mm-hmm. and he has phenomenal dogs. But it's so funny, if we don't hunt together for months, all of a sudden my dogs won't honor his and his won't honor mine. But by middle of the race, they've already figured out
who can do it.
Yeah,
and who
if Timber
can't.
barks, I'm going to check Timber because he has the track. If this bonehead barks over here, he's just a moron. I ain't wasting my time. But part of that is their pups, mm-hmm. and they get excited and they get a whiff and they know what's coming. And that's how you train them. They have to do it. And part of it is they can't smell, and they have so much drive. They want so badly to be able to smell it that they're losing their mind. But those are also the dogs that once it freshens up or gets up and jumped, they're the ones that are burning it down, and leaving the rest behind. So they still have their purpose,
And it's interesting, like you said, a football team, to see each one respond differently depending on the situation. And then today, there was a couple, you could see Timber like really working the tracks, and Fergie like down in the tracks. And then you'd see Amos light out a few times.
Yep.
And he was on it, like all the way to the bottom. And they were like, okay, Yeah. Then when they got to the bottom, it was like, okay, now we need the cold noses again to get back into this part. And it's interesting to see him kind of play those roles.
It's all cool. And I mean, just so interesting to understand. And every day I learn something new, and they're just like us. Like, they have their off days. And I get asked this question all the time. Every single hunter asks me this, and I'm surprised you haven't. So which one's your best dog? And my answer is always, well, which day? Because first of all, I don't want one best dog and 7 dogs that rely on that best dog. I want everyone to strive to be the best dog. And on any given day, there's some that aren't, but the bulk of them, 70% of them on any given day, they look like the hero. And my absolute stud dog can look like a dud. I mean, they all have good days. They all have off days, but I want a different best dog every day. 'Cause that means you have 7 great dogs,
What's crazy is, you've got a couple that have some injuries, right? And, getting into the discussion on mountain lion hunting or bear hunting with hounds, you're going to run into whether we should be hunting predators or not is one discussion that seems to come up a lot, especially among those who, people look at subsistence hunting and they traditionally think of, if you're hunting for meat, and then, knock out the elk and the deer. That makes sense. But why would you ever kill a bear? Or why would you ever kill a mountain lion? Even though that meat's delicious, right? But then there's the question of, kindness toward animals.
It's so cruel to the dogs.
It's cruel to the dogs. It's cruel for them to let them, chase. And I just don't understand that, because if you have spent any time with dogs, working dogs or playing with dogs like us, they live for things. Like they live to be out there and to be smelling and chasing and in this moment.
Yeah, not only do they live for it, it's literally what they were born and bred for. And so that's my thing and I've heard this before, and my answer to that, they say, well, it's just so cruel to the dog. And my answer is, no, what would be cruel to that dog is to have it be born, raise it up, and deny it the opportunity to do what it was born and bred to do and lives to do, and would give its life doing, quite honestly.
Right. I mean, there's a you can see these dogs come alive when it comes time when they get on a track and they're on that chase. I mean, today they lit out after that track, lined out fast, and to see them do that, I haven't seen, they haven't treed one yet. We haven't put one, they haven't bayed one up. And so I've yet to see a cougar close up with my own eyes, and the anticipation is just, I told you this earlier, for you to have seen, I don't know, 200 plus cougars, mountain lions, right? And for me to have seen 1 or 2 in my whole life, for me, they feel like a unicorn.
Yeah. Right?
They just feel like something that's just, you never see. For you, though, you see them every year.
Yep.
You watch them, you study their behavior, you know through working with your dogs how cats act in some ways. It's a really cool thing to have that experience, given mine is totally vacant. There is no, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny. I can remember probably the first or second lion tree I went to, and they were in shorter trees. And when you get there, the first thing I want to do is grab my dogs and tie them back because I don't want them to get hurt or injured. Or if the lion jumps, I don't want them to rechase it. And I remember those first couple of trees, going under that tree with a lion above my head and just thinking at any moment, he was coming down on me like just a mess, trying to reach in there and get the dogs. And now, like almost with reckless abandon, if a dog's climbed into the tree, and up there close to the lion, I'm going to like go up there and just reach up there within a couple feet of it and grab my dog out because I don't want to get hurt. And it's, you get kind of, I'm spoiled. I am spoiled when it comes to that. But sometimes you look back and you just go, holy cow, am I lucky and is this awesome?
Well, and let's talk about the dogs, because some of them just get in those close encounters and those scrapes, and chasing a bear or a mountain lion has inherent risk associated with it, right? Yep. But a good hound is going to do its job, and it's going to chase that cat into a tree. What's interesting, you were saying the first day we got here, is any mountain lion could crush a few dogs in no time, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yet they run up a tree when dogs show up.
Yeah. It's just, that is one of the most fascinating things to me. Literally 180-pound mountain lion that could decimate a pack of dogs or anything it comes up against. But I've had a 35-pound little female hound tree one by herself dozens of times. I don't know what it is about nature, but since we know what it is. That was, as a kitten, that was their protection. That was how they got away. From the day they're born, they're taught, if something loud is coming at you, climb the tree. And it's just I laugh so hard every time we walk up, and you get there a couple of hours. The dogs had it. It just takes you that long sometimes to get there, and the dog's had this thing treed, and he's looking down like annoyed, and I'm like, well, you could have came down and just
walloped,
consumed it by the time we got here, but they don't. So,
but now and then you get some that get into a scrap with the mountain lion. And I think that's another misconception, is that houndsmen don't care about the well-being of their dogs. And so talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
What's your thoughts on that?
So I love them all, right? If any of them die, I hope you don't ever have to see it. I've been very fortunate. I've only lost one dog in the last 12 years. I've had some get hurt. And the stupid thing is, when I lost him, the hunt was over. We were done. He fell off a ledge, like a ledge gave way, and he fell 100 feet and it killed him. And it just absolutely breaks my heart. But there again, right up until the day that happened, he was the happiest dog and doing exactly what he loved and what he was supposed to do. And I just can't imagine if he was on a chain and fat and miserable. I mean, once again, you want to talk cruelty, let a hound dog get fat and overweight. I hear that all the time when people pick my dogs up if they've gotten out of a race and I fed it and watered it. It looked so skinny and hungry. No, they're athletes and they run hard and they leave everything on the table. And so they are thin, but I feed them twice as much as anybody else. But these dogs, I got Patch, right? He's fixing to be 12 years old and he's went 2 days. I mean, he's a machine at 12 years old. You see most 12-year-old dogs that have been fat and overweight.
Could never do what he did.
Well, they're probably dead, honestly, at this point. Very rarely does a dog this big live this long. And it's because they're active and they're healthy and we take care of them. So, I mean, it's a touchy subject and I get it, but it's what they love. Number one. Number two, just like everything in life, and, not to get political or philosophical, but we're kind of a bunch of sissies. I mean, as humans, we're sissies. Fergie the other day she probably hit a stick on her head and put about a 1/2-inch gash on her head. I was telling you, like, as humans, we'd be done. Like, calling it a day, going home, probably wanting to get stitches in it. She doesn't even know it's there. She doesn't care. When you get back, you put some, antibiotic salve on it, and she's fine. She probably doesn't even know when it happened. Mm-hmm. And they're just so much tougher than we are, and their pain tolerance is insane.
Well, I think when you look at, let's talk mountain lions in general, and whether or not they should be hunted, right? Because that sort of also supports the idea of what you're doing as far as a lion hunter goes, like the value of it. Should a dog be raised, should a dog be bred in today's day and age that can run down a lion and harvest it, right? Help you harvest it. Mm-hmm. Should that even be a thing today?
That's tough. I mean, I guess it depends on who you ask. Do I think it should? Absolutely. I mean, once again, we've become so soft. Every dog had a purpose at some point, right? It's nature.
Yeah.
All of these dogs, no dog was ever bred or evolved into being a pet or a companion. I mean, am I correct?
Probably there was, I think dogs have always been companionable, and it's a side effect. But the primary purpose, for sure,
they are all working
has
dogs.
always been to serve a function.
So do we get rid of all dogs? I mean,
well, look at it this way. We talked about this before. There's a paper that I like to read every now and then that talks. It's a discussion on the morality of hunting, right? And at the end of this paper, there's a conclusion that I like. It says, contemporary hunting, like modern day hunting, is not a sport. It is a neo-traditional cultural practice in which contemporaries re-enter an archaic pursuit of meat. So basically, in today's world, hunting is something that, yes, we have done since the dawn of time, right? That's how humans became humans. It's how we are who we are today. And although hunting per se isn't necessary in the way that it was in the past, right? We engage in it in a neo-traditional cultural practice, like he describes, but it's not a sport. The term sport in general was used to describe sporting chance, not sport as in a game of baseball or a contest. Yes. And if you use the term sport and hunting as a sport, it's in the sense of fair chase, giving the animal a reasonable chance of escape, right? Mm-hmm. In this article or in this paper, he makes that the case that hunting's not a sport, in that sense, the contest sense. But he says wild animal death by hunter is on average less painful than death by farmer or by nature. And while more painful than death by enlightened animal husbandry, death by hunter allows the animal its wild life. So what he was saying in the paper is that death by hunter is less painful than what nature will dish out in general. Mm-hmm. But people are detached from the natural world. They don't know what death by nature is like. They don't see death. They're never around it. But he goes on to say, the only thing that might cause an animal a less painful death is animal husbandry, where you take a cow and in a very humane way you dispatch it for meat production, right? But that animal never got a wild life, so it came at its own kind of suffering, basically. And he says, regulated ethical hunting embodies the goods of trophic responsibility, ecosystem expertise, and anachronistic self-sufficiency, a rare experience of animal interdependence, and a kind of honesty. These are reasons why hunting can add value. But he says, whether or not one credits those goods as balancing the animal lives it takes, hunting still must be moral wherever either of the two following conditions exist. 1, a preservation of species or ecosystems requires neo-traditional hunting as the only viable wildlife management tool. So in the case of trying to preserve species or ecosystems, hunting must be seen as morally viable if it's the management tool that allows that. And we talked about that before. People have an idea of what nature's like. They see nature and they think it's this wonderfully balanced, perfect, like it can take care of itself kind of thing. But as we talked about, we have pushed nature to the very edges of what's left of wild places. In fact, we've pushed them to such limits that you have almost like in a cage, a trapped portion of elk. And then in that cage, you have a trapped portion of mountain lions, right? Mm-hmm. And they're trapped by all the city boundaries and all the farmers and all the stuff that's all around it. And in that fake, faux, mini wild ecosystem, the only way to keep elk from disappearing,
to keep it healthy,
is to employ hunting as a wildlife management tool. Or eventually what you will have is a predation rate that knocks down elk to a level that then causes the cougar population, let's say, to overexpand. And then when all the predators die, or all the prey animals die, then the cougars crash and the prey comes back. And you have these huge seesaws in these two populations, which at the end of the day is sometimes, like we mentioned, in today's modern world where you have wildlife pushed to the extreme limits of what's left of nature, often what you end up with, I think, are animals that are pushed too far and don't come back.
Yeah, and I've said this before, that's probably one of the biggest arguments I hear and I see online, social media, that kind of stuff is, and it is just being completely naive, but just get out of the way, and it's been this way for eons. Like, why all of a sudden do we think that we need to do something different? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we've screwed it up. I mean, we're humans. I would love to say that, okay, fine, no one has, well, I wouldn't love to say that, but but honestly, that nature could take care of itself, but it's just not the case. I mean, we have consumed all of their habitat. There's so little left, and that's not going to change. Whether you like it or not, whether I like it, whether an environmentalist likes it, that's not going to change, right? We can all agree upon that. We're not going to start culling people and returning it back to the way. So it's our job to ensure that it thrives and survives in what it has, and it has to be managed, predators included, especially predators. And that's the part you can't get. I see they're launching a massive offensive in BC against trying to end all predator hunting. They're doing the same thing in Colorado. I see states all over, trying to outlaw coyote contests, that kind of stuff. And it's just that emotional, well, you're killing just for sport or just for fun because they're predators and you're not eating it. Well, first of all, we eat it, okay? It's incredible. I'd rather have lion than elk or deer, and that's the honest truth. It is incredible table fare.
Right.
But as long as we're here on this earth and we're not going anywhere, something has to be done. And I feel like us as hunters are the responsible ones that are, even if we're not doing it perfect and we're not doing it completely right, we're at least trying, not just whining about how it should be left alone.
Well, he says in this paper, hunting must be moral wherever either of two of these conditions hold. Like we said, to preserve ecosystems and species, for game management, that must be perceived as moral for that reason, or two, and this is usually not an or, but an and. In this case, that the animal cost of farming per unit of nutrition is equal to or greater than that of hunting. He has in this paper, it's great, he cites like 3 or 4 cases of specific cases where how many animals does farming kill? Right? And they've done these studies to figure that out. How many mice, how many amphibians, how many lizards, and, different birds, ground nesting birds, and how many animals does farming kill? Taking away habitat also from deer and elk and other animals that might have otherwise lived there, eliminating all the insects and bugs and microfauna that would normally live there. Now it's just acres and acres of corn. Monolithic
entire
crop.
ecosystem
Gone.
Yep.
Right. So what is the cost of life to produce a unit of nutrition from that versus the cost of life when you kill an elk per unit of nutrition gained, right? And what he's saying is hunting must be perceived as moral where the cost of life is less per unit of nutrition than that of farming or ranching.
So if we have to replace hunting with farming and ranching because we're no longer consuming wild game,
and it kills more animals than the hunting would have, then you have to look at hunting as a morally acceptable practice. And he has some specific examples, studies that have been done that I'll read on another podcast down the road as I want to read more of the books on the subject. But what they found was there was a clear dominance in elk hunting in terms of reduced animal suffering, reduced death for the amount of nutrition gained compared to that of other farming, except for one case. If you grow your own seed in your own local yard, then you can get a per unit nutrition that is more efficient than that of hunting. But 90-something percent, 95% of the country buys from the local grocery store. And when you look at the non-locally produced nutrition, whether it be cattle or whether it be agriculture, the unit of nutrition gained is far, like 3 to 4 times the cost in animal life as is hunting.
Yeah. Well, and not
so a vegetarian or someone else who doesn't grow their own food in their own yard is killing more animals than those people than a hunter does.
And not to mention, if we're doing it based on emotion and love of animals, the animals that we are now growing to consume, what is their quality of life? Not living wild. What is the ecological effects of all of these
food plots?
Yes.
And I'm not against farming. I love farming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Often I get criticized for hating on farmers or hating on ranching. Mm-hmm. That's not my opinion at all. I think there's good farming practices. In fact, this paper highlights the fact that at the end of the day, the actual hunting that's engaged in versus the actual type of farming that's engaged in versus the actual type of ranching that's varies so much that almost all of them in some way or another can beat one or the other depending on, this one's local in this environment. This one is an animal killed in your backyard versus one in Canada, and you can mix and match it. But at the end of the day, the summary, the deal is life eats life. How can we responsibly take and consume while we live here on this planet in a way that reduces animal suffering and gives us the best unit of nutrition per cost of life?
Yeah, and
it's just a responsible way of living.
To further that point, I mean, you say I don't hate ranching, I don't hate farming. Well, yeah, if you ended all ranching and farming, what would happen? The exact same effect on hunting. I mean, they have to go hand in hand. All of it has to go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And that's what our job is to do.
So when you look at it from those perspectives, like the idea of, cost of life per unit of nutrition, and you look at preserving an ecosystem or a species and using hunting for that, you're placed smack dab in the center of managing lions, doing some level of predator control, knowing that X amount of lions in a certain area will reduce elk by X amount. And then by having a surplus in lions, you have a decrease in this resource that humans also consume, right? Mm-hmm. And so it becomes a process of, well, we don't want this population to get of ungulates like elk to be hurt so bad. Plus, they represent an economic resource as well.
In Colorado.
In Colorado, right. You're talking about not just a protein source, but now you're talking about recreational hunting or people who come out and consume this stuff. And some people who spend thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to hunt elk or sheep or goat or something like that. And it's got an economic value as well. And so when you're out there and you're weighing all of this, when you can go out and manage cats, mountain lions, keep their numbers at a certain level, then you know what your ungulate population is going to be, minus weather and disease and so on. And you can maximize the number of both as a harvestable resource, as something that perpetuates. So you try not to kill any female mountain lions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's another, I'm kind of getting a little off subject.
And I'm not saying it's wrong to kill a female.
I struggle with it, so we don't do it. We have a very healthy lion population, so we're able not to, but as a management tool, you
may need to.
Yes. Well, actually, we've even had, I would say, off the record, some division wildlife officers who are dealing with human-lion conflicts and issues who are going, some of these females need to start dying. Like, we're getting too high. And I still struggle with it morally.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So I don't. And that's okay. We have a very, very healthy population of lions. Very healthy. And that's another, like, huge misconception. One of the biggest is you hear this, we're killing endangered species.
Yeah, that's just flat ignorance.
It just infuriates me. It's like the one thing I won't put up with, like on our social media stuff, is I'll let you call me a lot of names, but I'm not going to let you use my platform to spread your misinformation lines. I just won't do it. You'll deleted, blocked.
You mentioned the coyote thing, and I read the book Coyote America by Dan Flores, and in that book he talks about, coyotes from top to bottom, right? Despite our efforts to eradicate coyotes like we did wolves with poison and so forth and anything known to man, coyotes went from being a Great Plains animal at European discovery of the Americas to basically an animal that inhabits every state in the nation. So obviously trying to kill them had an opposite effect because they just thrived despite all our efforts. So one of the things that he mentioned was, the coyote doesn't need PETA. It just does not need the help of animal rights activists in the sense that you can't kill them if you wanted to. They're like the plague. They're like rats. They won't die. Now, does that mean, basically it is one of America's, I heard another coyote hunter, big time coyote hunter say that coyotes represent one of the world's most remarkable renewable resources. If you were out to pull pelts, it's like they just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming as you take them. And I think for the most part, most healthy predator populations fall into that category. If you manage them well, you can pull from that population, and you need to spare the prey population to keep it healthy. The thing with lions, like bears, like misconception is you can't eat them.
Yeah, no.
But that's not true.
No.
Especially inland bears. I love bear meat. But lion meat's even better.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't dislike bear meat. It's not my favorite, but lion it's probably top 3 favorite wild game animal. It's phenomenal. The killing Toms killing females debate, there's probably a ton of science behind all of it. Mine is just and we were talking about this earlier, ethics is an ethical thing is an internal decision, right? What's ethical to me is not to someone else. And to me, the killing a female, I choose not to. I don't like to, because it does reduce a lion population, and so I choose not to do it. But I'm not even saying that it's, terrible. Other people can do it, until they're doing it to the point that they're reducing
hurting the ecosystem
and so many people think same thing. And this is, I'm going to catch some flack for this, but this is a Utah mentality. At 90%, 95% of people in Utah, they despise mountain lions because their mule deer are struggling, and it's the lions. It's all the lions. Kill them all.
Right.
And it probably is a part of it, but a lion, we talked about this earlier too. How can you say one species is more important than the other, right? When we're killing them, like if you're willing to kill a deer, but then you say, "Oh, I'm not going to kill a lion; it's a cat." They're so majestic. Like, that's foolishness.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. Like, why does a mule deer have more right to thrive and exist than a lion? Like, there has to be a balance, or it's just poor management.
Mm-hmm.
And so, killing lions to save the mule deer population is just idiocy to me. But I'm also a lion hunter.
Yeah. For me, what I see is a situation where, there's different studies been done, but apex predators have a role, like every animal in the chain, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want them gone because they're part of a healthy ecosystem. They've been here for tens of thousands of years. These animals have co-evolved with everything else that's here today, that's native and that we care about. So you unplug them from the ecosystem. What happens? Things go wrong. Yeah. Things go wrong. Same with wolves. But does that mean we need to let them explode and eliminate these fragile ungulate populations that, by the way, humans consume? There's a study that says that humans in the United States consume 300 million pounds of white-tailed deer meat in a year. I can only imagine how much elk meat is consumed. I'm not sure. I'd be very curious to see some estimates on that. And mule deer and all deer out west, right? All animals out west. So what happens when those protein sources, those meat sources are then fed to an unchecked lion or wolf population? Well, what happens to that meat? What happens to that 300 million pounds of meat that we would otherwise consume? Well, now it has to be replaced with some other source.
We grow it.
Yeah, which we discussed earlier causes more death per unit of nutrition in general than does the hunting. So it's all kind of a balance, and it's sad that we're constantly up against people who don't understand and want to shut down hunting. Especially hunting of mountain lions or bears or wolves or any predator. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's all part of the whole system in general. I understand when people have like with you're just, the idea of killing a female bothers you, right? I understand that. But when you get into, like we talked about this earlier, the hierarchy of animals and which ones you kill and which one you won't, that's one of my pet peeves. Like, I hate that. I get kind of irritated by it because to me, it's like a pig's life is a pig's life. And an elk's life is an elk, and a cougar is a cougar. And every life is equally important, and it's all part of that.
From humans down, from below humans.
Right.
Let's specify that, because I think we've all been threatened.
Right.
We should die because we killed an animal.
Right.
There's a difference, guys. I'm sorry.
I agree.
There's a difference.
But you have that ecosystem that we care about. For me, I don't care which animal you pluck from that ecosystem. If you do so responsibly within game management objectives and within our goals to managing the ecosystem as best we can through modern science and biology and so on, and if we do so in an efficient and humane way, I don't care if it's a cougar, if it's a female, a male. I don't care if it's a wolf. I don't care if it's a coyote. I don't care what it is. If it sustains the ecosystem and is ethical and clean.
And like you said before, is not imposing limitations for opportunity for other people by drastically reducing a population.
Yeah.
So that's when you female here or there. That's kind of my argument to it. A female here or there.
That's part of the management objectives.
Yep, and they're okay with that. But a lot of states have female subquotas.
Yeah.
And once 10% or 20% of the quota is killed is females, they shut it down because they recognize that is going to reduce the population.
Yes.
It's going to limit opportunity. It's going to hurt
both economically and from that experiential side of things where you don't get to hunt at all and be outdoors and experience the wild in that way, and as a protein food source.
Yep.
I mean, in all those ways you're impacted when you negatively impact a population of a renewable resource like that.
Any species, not just a predator. So
do you notice behavioral differences between a tom? And by the way, what do you call a male mountain lion a tom?
I have no clue. And I honestly will have to get with Casey because when he was here before, the one morning he rolled up and he says, I said, I have a big tom track. And he rolled up and he said, what do they call a female?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask next.
Ask Casey Harbertson.
A girl cat?
No, he looked it up and it was... Now we're going to have to look it up.
Feline?
No, it's a name like off the wall. I don't even know.
Really?
I don't even know where it came from. But yeah, you'll go, what? I've never heard that.
Yeah.
But, so, behavioral differences, just differences in general. Range, home ranges, huge difference.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, females, you'd have to talk to somebody who do lion studies, but they do travel, don't get me wrong. I was reading on a female that was collared in British Columbia that made her way to, I mean, in a year and a half's time, she covered over 300 or 400 miles out into the plains of Montana and then back and settled a home range. It happens. But once they establish, this is my experience, I can usually find the same female in the same 4 or 5 mile area drainage, usually most of the time. Toms have massive home ranges. I mean, they say 100 square miles, and that's probably pretty accurate, but they'll also, when a tom sets out to find a home range, he'll go 500 miles. He doesn't care.
Okay.
Extremely nomadic. I mean,
solitary.
Yes. And until they find where they're going to go, and then they settle down, and until another male kicks them out, they're going to be there. Females tolerate each other. They have overlapping. It probably gets a little chippy. We don't see that.
Yeah.
But females overlap territories a lot. Toms don't really overlap territories. They have toms travel through and maybe a little overlap, but extremely territorial. And I don't know the numbers on this, but I've heard, and I'm sure it's true just with what I've seen, that lion predation is way more lions die at the hand of lions than hunters. I mean, by far and away, probably 3 or 4 times as many. They're very violent, brutal, territorial species. I mean, just look at house cats.
Yeah.
You ever heard a tomcat fight in the middle of the night? It's horrifying.
It is.
So imagine 150 pounds doing that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they kill young. I mean, you watch those Africa specials, those lions, they just, I mean, they're brutal.
So tell me this, like, when a lion is being chased, do the females or males act any different?
No, really not.
Okay.
So a lion chase is really, you still have to get lucky. And so we turn out and this time of year lions can cover a ton of country. When there's a bunch of snow, they don't move as much. But I mean, some lion races are a mile or 2 miles if you get on the short end of it. I've had lion chases where I found a track in the morning on 6-hour-old snow, and I thought, oh, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And I've turned out, and 10 hours and 15, 18, 20 miles later, I didn't feel like I was one step closer to that lion than when I turned out 10 hours earlier. And he did that all in a night. So toms travel like that a lot. But once they're jumped, unless they're in really rough, rugged country, they just can't get away from the dogs. They're built for a burst. I mean, that's how they kill deer. They don't run deer down miles. They pick their spot. They go for it. They have 2 to 3, maybe 400 yards in them. They're done. And so usually once we jump them, it's, that's usually we're going to get them caught, whether it be in the ledges or a tree. But every lion race is way different.
And that's what surprises me. You'd think a cat would hear a dog barking, and hear him on the track, and that lion would run away, start putting miles and miles and miles and miles ahead, and the dogs have a long day ahead of them. But that's not quite how it works, is it?
Well, some do. But then others don't. And more often than not, they don't. I mean, you got to remember, I've told you this before, like if we all knew how many times we've been in the woods and a lion was watching us, you'd probably never go in the woods again. They rely on their stealth and not being seen. And even when dogs are coming, their whole life, they've been so stealthy and so sleek and that they just rely on that. And so they'll usually let the dogs get within 50 or 100 yards. They might be in a ledge.
Especially if they don't know any better. They've never been chased.
Yeah, I mean, they might stay in a ledge for an hour while the dogs are trying to sort it out and in and around and amongst and through. And then all of a sudden, once the dog gets on the fresh scent, then when the dog's 10 yards from them, that's when they jump. So they're all different, but they try to hold. I mean, that's how they hunt. That's how they live.
And you were saying, I mean, once the dogs, like I'm watching the dogs work in the sense, fresh enough that they're lining out on it pretty solid and they're following it, even in windy and hot areas in the afternoon. They're moving in. We're probably, you were thinking maybe a half mile from this mountain line. At what, when do they go, just start wind checking it and running after
Well,
it?
It's really all about the age of the track. So, I mean, even if you're within 300 yards of the lion, if he walked to a point and stopped and then he's been laying there for 6 hours, it's still a 6-hour-old track, 300 yards
even if
away.
he's super close.
And so to that point, they're just trailing, grinding, cold trailing. Sometimes you can keep up, sometimes you can't. There were spots where they had great scent and they'd get several hundred yards out on us, and then they'd stall out and we'd catch up and we'd get to watch them work. But once they get on an hour-old, 2-hour-old, they're gone. I mean, you can't keep up. All of a sudden you think you're keeping up and you're just hoofing it, and you look down and they're 3/4 of a mile, and then 1 mile, and then 1.2, and then they're treed,
Yeah.
So it really is just all the age of the track, not even really the distance you are from the lion.
That's crazy.
So.
That's crazy. And then, it sounds like once they're within a certain range of that cat, within on a fresh enough track, you're going to catch them.
Oh yeah.
So in the areas that we've been, a few toms have been spared or saved.
Sorry, suckers.
Hey, describe how that's happened.
So I'm just getting my butt kicked, first of all, and it's frustrating. I'm a very competitive guy. I don't like to lose, and so when I lose, it eats at me, and it's eating at me. But this has happened a few times, and I'm sure at some point, some of you'll see some of Casey's footage, and it's the same thing. And I think it's the same 2 or 3 toms. And we're just down in some country it's a lot of private land, and I have access to nearly all of it. But you don't have access to all of it, you can end up in trouble. Not in trouble, but in the snow, it's a little hairier because the dogs get way out on you. But like yesterday, we're basically with the dogs, and we just, as we're going towards this chunk of property that we know we don't have permission on, we're going, just turn right. And they didn't turn right, and you get almost to the fence line, and you go, all right, we're done. Holler, dogs come to you, and you leave. But it's, the private is, or highways, they're, heading towards a highway, and I'm not going to have my dog get around a highway. And I'm surprised more people don't say, well, what the heck are you doing hunting around the private? Just get away from it. And I agree 100% because it's driving me insane. But that's where the lions are right now. There's 8 feet of snow in the mountains. The deer and the elk are gone. They're down lower. They're around
We're
private.
seeing elk and deer everywhere we look.
In people's front yards. That's where the lions are going to be. And so, I don't want you guys to think I'm reckless. We're not going into an area where it's like, well, let's turn loose and hope.
Right.
That this lion's going to be somewhere we can hunt.
When you look at a map, it's
almost
like
all of it.
Right.
And they're choosing to go, and it's kind of been happening to me this winter, and that's what I was telling you. And I keep getting ticked because this isn't what normally happens. Like, this happens once a winter where all of a sudden it heads to a highway and you got to call the dogs off, or it starts going to a piece of private and you call the dogs off. But I think it's the same 2 or 3 cats, and this is just how they're traveling.
Do you think that they've been chased quite a bit? They moved into this area. They have some experience being chased by hounds. They know how to evade them, or is this just a couple of times where they've just made the right turn?
I don't think they've learned that. I think they're intelligent enough that they could. I mean, a smart lion, a smart bear, they learn how to lose hounds, and they know exactly what to do if they've been chased a lot. But I don't know, honestly, that we've had, other than the one that I caught for Casey, I don't know that we've had one jumped. And if they're not jumped, they
don't know.
No. I mean, they don't care. So I don't think that's the case. I don't think they're trying to get away. And I keep saying, like, 90% of the time they're going to do this, and then the sucker does the exact opposite. I think it's just the same Tom. That's how he travels. That's his habits. And we're just going to have to get lucky and catch him.
Yeah.
He's going to have to make a mistake.
So when a houndsman gets up on they line out, they chase it, they tree it. We were looking at some of this country, and the trees are max 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
That's all they need to get in it. I mean, they just get up a little bit. Is that what happens in this country?
No, they get as high as they can. And I hate short trees because I've got a couple of dogs that literally think
they can climb trees.
They know they can climb a tree.
Trees.
They think they can whip a lion, and they can't. And so it gets a little wild. But they're smart. I mean,
because you also use them for bear in Utah.
Yep.
Where that's legal. Tracking bear compared to tracking lion. Which one is the harder of the two?
They're just so different. So a lion is 100%, it's because there are way less of them. It's finding the track and getting caught up to the animal. Because they put off, I don't know what the number is, but a minuscule amount of sink. I mean, a bear's like a trash truck running through the woods.
Right. Bears stink.
Oh yeah. And so the lion is getting caught up to it and the country it covers, and a bear they're a big, physical, strong, tough animal that sometimes doesn't care that a hound is
bothering it
right behind it, barking and baying. And so they're two completely different animals.
Which one wreaks more havoc on the dogs? Which one is probably the more risky of the two?
Actual animals, I would say bear. More bear injuries. A bear is a brute, and it can just maul a dog. Lions, but what's crazy is a lion can, with such precision, it can kill a dog quickly, but they choose not to. Number one, the terrain is, when you have injuries to dogs or, God forbid, deaths, which happens sometimes. I've been very lucky. It hasn't really happened. But it's usually more about ledges and cliffs and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The terrain.
When we were chasing them, when I was watching, I mean, there were some 100-foot drops, and you have a photo of on one of those cliffs where you actually had a dog, or close to where you had your dog fall. Those cliffs are nasty, and some of them roll.
Yeah.
So and if there's snow on them, I could just see a dog just whoop.
Well, and that's
right
why,
off.
honestly, that's why I like dirt hunting more. And if you think I have it bad, one of these times come over across the border to Utah. Mason is a brave man over there. You can pretty much guarantee when you turn loose on a lion in San Juan County, Utah, you're going to end up on a 500-foot ledge. I mean, that's just where they end up. I hate it. I despise it because I love my dogs and I don't want something to happen to him. And he's never had one happen. It terrifies me, especially in snow. That's why I like dirt hunting.
So you get freaked every time we come by a road with cars or a cliff.
Yeah.
You can physically see you get lots of anxiety.
Oh yeah. 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 It's just so much time and effort and
that's what I was going to say is there's an emotional connection, but there's a financial
huge
connection, and then just an investment in time and energy with an animal and a relationship, because I feel like one of the reasons to train a dog, one of the reasons to teach a dog to hunt maybe, or to blood track, or even just to do agility or protection work or obedience training, one of the reasons to do that is simply to develop a relationship with the dog so that it becomes something that is special to you and to the dog as well. Like there's a bond that happens when a human and canine work together.
Yep.
And that's why I think it's when you hear people say houndsmen don't care about their dogs, I just think that people have no idea how much they care.
Yeah.
Because of all those things we just described. That's an investment. It's there. People just don't know it. And the fact that you're willing to risk, but here's the thing. Why do you guys skydive? Why do human beings jump off cliffs in wingsuits? Why do we do UFC? I mean, not me, but some people. It's like part of life is living it. It's an adventure. And that means for some of these dogs, that means tangling with a bear. That is part of what it means to live. And I think it's really soft and naive to think that is cruel. It's like, hey, you're not going to see me jump off some building in a wingsuit. It's not going to happen. But I don't look at the guy who chooses to do that as, well, I kind of do, as insane, but still.
Well, you have to.
But I'm like, but I applaud him for the drive and the desire to take a chance.
Yeah.
To
Well,
live.
And it's you would have to see it, right? I mean, now seeing these dogs, like, that's the only way you can understand. They are crazy, the insanity that they have, but the absolute desire and heart that they execute it with, I mean, it's all they live for. The part you don't see is we've put some miles on, some hard miles, and the dogs are a little out of shape. I haven't been hunting a lot in the last month, and they're sore and their toenails are wore down, and every night they're, a little stiff like we are.
Yeah.
But guess what happens when I pull out there in the morning? At 4:30 to load them up. They're losing their mind. And I only pick 6 and there's 12 there. Right. And the other 6 are livid that they're staying home. They're not going like, oh, just leave me in the doghouse. I don't want to go. I mean, they're losing their minds because they don't get to go.
You already said you don't like the cats to get in the rocks on ledges because that's how dogs fall off and so on. You prefer to get them in a tree. And a taller tree at that. Now, when it comes to taking a lion, you're going to shoot the lion. What are the sort of things that you're paying attention to in that moment as you approach that moment? And how often does a lion jump out of a tree because it sees a human?
So lions, not as much. It's usually bears, and it's actually dangerous for a lion. We do get sometimes that jump, and when they jump and they run, usually they'll retree. The dogs retree them every time you get there. They jump and they run. They do that 3 or 4 times. They gas, and the dogs can really put it on them. And it's not, I mean,
They just get tired.
4 good hounds can honestly kill an adult tom lion once he's gassed. He just can't fight. And so it's not good for the dogs or the lion. Very rarely do lions do it. Bears do it more often. But there's just things you do. You sneak in. You don't come from above them. So if you're on a steep hill, I never come straight down on a lion where you're looking eye level across at it.
Make it feel like
he went up, so he feels safe because he's up. If you're above him, he doesn't feel safe.
Right.
And so you don't come from above. Bears, you don't come from wind. Once you're under the tree, they're usually pretty good. The few lions, just a tip for you houndsmen out there that get on a jumping one. I've had some that were absolute nightmares, and you're literally 2 hours later, you're going like, how am I going to get my dogs off? I'm done. I'm exhausted. My hunter's never going to get here. A dog's going to get hurt. A lion's going to get hurt. I've figured out, if you get on all fours and crawl in like a dog, they'll let you. It's kind of crazy because you got to catch the dogs.
Yeah.
And so I get on all fours and I crawl in there just like a dog and start leashing dogs up. And then you stand up and the lion jumps, but you have all your dogs. And that's the struggle is getting the dogs from going. I mean, their drive is so hard.
And what you're doing is you're trying to tether all the dogs so they don't get hurt.
Yep. Or take off after it when it jumps. Yeah. I always tie back all of the dogs before we shoot, because if for some reason one comes out wounded, we definitely don't want a fight.
Well, I imagine too, you shoot it and it falls and it lands and maybe it's still alive, just weak. It doesn't take much to rip open a dog, you know,
and there's
in those last
it's like
gasps.
I know some guys that don't tie their dogs back, and they say, well, I get their reasoning. They say those dogs are there for
they earned it
3 hours. Well, and they say they're there for 3 hours before I got there, not tied back. The 10-minute time there is not going to make a difference. But my thing is there are so few things we can control in what we do. It's like the one thing you can control. I'm going to control it.
Yeah.
I've heard of a bear falling out after being shot and landing on a dog. I mean, think what a 350-pound bear would do to a dog. Yeah.
Especially from height.
Yeah, from 20 feet up. So I just don't even risk it. So.
Gotcha. And it doesn't take much, though, to take a lion. Once you shoot it with an arrow, you shoot it with a gun, whatever.
Yeah.
It sound like it.
They're not incredibly tough animals. I mean,
in that way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Put a hole in them and they're done.
Yeah. Good shot though. You got to make the shot count. But, I saw something the other day, and this one of my pet peeves, hunters attacking other hunters.
Yeah. I was going to ask.
It drives me nuts. And so it was, somebody had ran a line and they posted a video, and here come the moral high authority hunters saying, oh, I don't even care that you're hunting, but I don't understand why your ego says that you have to use a bow. You know, like, you didn't do anything. You just showed up and shot it. The dogs did all the work. I just think you're being arrogant by even using a bow. Yeah. And you owe that animal. And then, of course, the guy was the foremost expert on it. And then he starts telling him about how the bows are not killing it. I'm here to tell you, I've seen him shot with both. And as a whole, I mean, across the board, the archery shots kill the lions quicker than the rifle shots.
Yeah.
With a good shot. You know, you got to worry more about shot placement with limbs.
Right.
But it does a better job, I'm telling you.
I think that bears and lions both, as I've shot bears with guns versus bows, I've seen bears die 10 times as fast with a bow.
Yep.
It's like in, out, and it's like I don't know what it does, but that hemorrhaging just happens fast. Yep. I think it's also far less traumatic. Yep. They just they lose blood pressure. Yep. Boom, they pass out. They're seconds. Right. And I've seen the same thing with lions shot with arrows versus with guns when you watch it on YouTube and so on. You see them jump and run, and you see them hit with an arrow, and it's like they're like, what?
And then they just go limp.
Yep. Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of hunters will criticize a hunter for using hounds. even non-hunters especially, for using hounds to hunt a mountain lion. And I think that just comes from a high degree of naivety. Like, I'm not naive to the fact that there's no way I'm spotting and stalking a mountain lion, right? Like I know that. We're on these tracks. I can barely spot them. And then it's invisible. It's like an invisible animal out there. You put the dogs on it and all of a sudden you're going right after it.
Yep.
They can do things we cannot do.
Yep.
They're basically us using technology, whether it's biological tech or electronic. A dog is technology.
Yep.
It's a form of it's using a tool that we ourselves do not have.
Yeah.
And by using that, you're able to hunt these animals in a way that there's no way you could do it without the dogs.
Yeah.
No way.
Yep.
Other than the lucky accidental opportunities.
Into it with a bow.
Yeah.
Bow hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so you're not going to manage anything if you don't use a dog.
Yeah.
It's your option, or trapping. And we've talked about this. I don't like trapping. I understand it people are going to get mad at me, especially a bunch of trappers.
Oh, yeah.
I myself, that's not the way I want to go as an animal. Mm-hmm. If I'm the animal, is to get caught in a trap and then have to sit there and wait for someone to come and dispatch me. It's like, man, it's just such not a sporting way to go. In some ways, like, I would rather be chased by the dogs, try to outsmart the dogs, do whatever I can to get away from the dogs, get treed and get shot. Mm-hmm. That's it's at least you're going down some way, right?
Yep.
Trapping, to me, it's like such a brutal way of managing wildlife, but I understand it needs to be done, and especially in the case of wolves, where you're not going to hunt them with hounds.
Yep.
Outside of the accidental stumble on them or here and there, you're not going to hit management objectives with wolves without trapping. Mm-hmm. I understand its necessity. I also understand its difficulty and the brilliance that some trappers have in being able to pull it off.
Yep.
But outside of trapping and outside of hounds, you're not making a dent on mountain lion population.
No. Yeah, and the difference is, I guess, when we're talking about hunters, like you say you're not a fan of trapping, but you don't attack trapping, right?
No.
Because if as a hunter, you can't stand behind and defend trapping and you're going to attack trapping, guess how easy it's going to be for the anti-hunter to take trapping away.
Right.
And so that's probably my plea as a houndsman / hunter. I hear so much. It drives me insane when I hear hunters saying how cheating it is. It's not just anti-hunters. It's hunters.
And if a guy actually does it, for example, 3 or 4 days, 5 days of hiking like we've done, I don't know how many miles we've covered, but it's not just miles. It's straight up vertical miles through cliffs, through brush, through it's like miles times 10th degree difficulty all day, every day. I mean, this is a brutal hunt. To say you didn't earn it in some sense, physically, that's just not true. Yeah. Physically, it's an impressive level of fitness needed to do this kind of hunt. Yep. Now, I'm sure you can have a guy hang back, get it in the tree, somehow or another, get the hunter in position if he's not in the kind of condition to pull it off. But in general, if you're truly going to follow these dogs all the way through, all day, every day, that's some endurance.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to taking, for me, I'm along for the ride on this hunt. I am here to leverage your experience, your resources, your dogs that you've trained years, your 15, 14 years of experience, for me to see a mountain lion close up for the first time and to get the meat to take it home, right? I'm just kind of here.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I'm going to take that shot, if I get that opportunity. I don't think it's pounding my chest to do that. It's just experiencing it.
Yeah.
Going along, watching the dogs and learning from it. And it's a shame, I think, where too many people look at it as something that they can't understand or relate to because you're using dogs and someone else's dogs at that to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I learned so much about mountain lions in the last 3 or 4 days that I wouldn't know. And I'm a curious person.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean,
to touch it, to open its mouth, to see it, there's something about putting your hands on an animal you've never touched before.
Yeah. Well, and when you relate it to that, I mean, like using someone else's dog as an experience, I mean, does that mean the guy who talks to Cameron Haynes or asks him questions about elk hunting to further himself, to rely on someone else's experience, to watch these other videos, does that make him a cheater or make it any less?
Right.
I mean, that's a tool you use. And so, I mean, hunters we can be our own worst enemies, but usually I think I like to think that most of the time it's out of an innate desire to be a better human. Just misguided. Yep.
Then there's just those that want to be a-holes, which I run into those a lot too.
Oh, yeah.
But this has been cool because we're filming a lot of it. We're going to show the hunts and kind of edit and tell our story with it. And I'm excited. I'm excited for that. And I've really appreciated watching other houndsmen on TV work. I've really appreciated the shows that others have put together, like the ones I've seen with Ranella. They really opened my eyes to a world I had misjudged. And to be able to now kind of take what I learn and share with others and hopefully help others see, at least for themselves, what it entails. It's just neat to be a part of that process, you know?
Yeah. And don't let him fool you. He's mentioned a couple of times he wishes he could get hounds.
I do. I've had dogs my whole life, and it's funny. I've had dogs I trained to be waterfowl dogs, upland dogs. We used to have like 20 homing pigeons, and we just put their heads under their wings, dizzy them up, stuff them in a bush, and go get the dogs and let them, point and flush those birds. And just like I said, I don't care that I'm really even whether we hunt a ton or it's just that relationship building time with a buddy, with your dog, that is, I think, special. And if you're interested in animals at all, and then I am just, I want to see how they think and what they do and work with a dog. It's hugely rewarding, I think. So.
Yeah.
But I also have grown up. I'm like 45. I'm too smart to buy a hound now, even though I want one.
I hope so.
Well, Randy, thanks for coming on the podcast. And hopefully tomorrow, which is my last day up here for a while, hopefully tomorrow we get it done. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't.
Hopefully we don't. So you have to come back and do it again, right?
What's Pixler? Is that like?
It's German.
Is it really?
Yeah. My dad's side was German. So
gotcha.
My mother's side was English. So
Randy Pixler and Black Timber Outfitters.
Yep.
And how do people reach out to Randy?
You can go to our website, which is blacktimberoutfitters.net, and then we also have Facebook and Instagram. And I'll tell you right now, we're in the Stone Ages when it comes to social media, but we're trying.
Yeah.
So either Black Timber Outfitters on Facebook or BTO San Juan on Instagram. And we have some cool stuff, and sometimes you got to wait a couple days. You don't get 3 or 4 posts a day from us. Sometimes you get a post every week. But,
yeah.
But it's usually a cool post. So.
Yeah. Well, if people want to reach out to me as well, I can point them at you too. I can forward any messages, so people can write into Gritty on all the normal ways. Go to briancall.com. It's all right there. And this has been awesome, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's a special thing to be able, I think, to whether it's a horseman or a houndsman, to see a guy work with so many different animals and be an expert. It's fun. So keep it up, man.
Oh, I will. Until my wife says I can't anymore.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Stay gritty.